Zira sat in the dimly lit control room of the Solarian defense station, staring at the holographic screen in front of her. The station floated silently above the vast gas giant Scythos 9, far from the central planets of the Empire. It was supposed to be a quiet night. Nothing ever happened in this sector. But then, something did happen. A blinking red dot appeared on her scanner. Zira frowned and tapped the screen. The dot was moving. Fast. She zoomed in, and her heart skipped a beat. An unidentified warship. Her long blue fingers danced across the control panel, running a scan. The ship was massive, much larger than any Solarian vessel. Its dark metal hull reflected almost no light, making it hard to detect. But the strangest thing was its energy signature. Zira had never seen anything like it. She turned to her superior officer, Commander Valrek, who was reviewing reports nearby. "Sir, we have an unknown warship entering Sector 17, she said, her voice tense. Valrek barely glanced up. Probably a cargo ship without proper identification. Run a secondary scan. Zira obeyed. The second scan finished in seconds, and this time, she froze in shock. The warship's energy reading matched an ancient classification, one that hadn't been recorded in over 300 years. Her voice trembled. "Commander, the energy signature. It matches human technology." Valrek stiffened. His eyes, once calm, darkened with something close to fear. "That's impossible," he muttered. "Humans are just legends." Everyone knew the stories. The Terran Empire, the last human war. And then, the Great Purge, when the united alien races had wiped out humanity forever. It was history, nothing more. Yet, here it was, a ship with a human signature, alive and moving through their space. Valrek shook his head. "This has to be a mistake. Check the records again." Zira ran a third scan, hoping she was wrong. But the readings remained the same. Commander Valrek's expression hardened. "Alert the High Council. If this is real, it changes everything." Zira sent the encrypted report immediately. The station's alarm lights flashed yellow, signaling a possible threat. Other officers stopped their work, murmuring in confusion. Zira turned back to the scanner. The warship was getting closer, but something was strange. It wasn't broadcasting any signals. No greetings, no warnings, just silence. And then, the ship stopped, right outside the defense station's perimeter. "Why isn't it moving?" Zira whispered. Valrek's voice was low. "It's watching us." A cold chill ran down Zira's spine. The control room fell silent. Every officer stared at the screen, waiting. But the ship did nothing. Minutes passed. Then, without warning, the warship disappeared from the scanner. What? Where did it go? Zira's fingers flew across the controls. She ran another scan, then another. Nothing. "It's not possible," Valrek said. "No ship can vanish like that." But the screen remained empty. The unknown warship was gone, as if it had never been there. Yet Zira knew the truth. Something was out there, and if the old stories were real, humanity was no legend. It was coming back. Zira couldn't sleep that night. The image of the vanished warship burned into her mind. It didn't make sense. No known technology could disappear like that. Not even the Solarians, with all their advanced stealth systems. She sat in the control room long after her shift ended, staring at the screen, hoping, no, dreading, that the warship would return. But the scanner remained empty. Until it didn't. A soft beep echoed through the room. Zira's pulse raced. She turned to the screen, and there it was. The warship had reappeared. But this time, it was closer. Too close. She swallowed hard and tapped the emergency alert. The station's lights flashed red, and the low hum of the defense shields activating filled the air. Within seconds, Commander Valrek stormed into the room, his sharp black uniform immaculate despite the late hour. "What happened?" he demanded. Zyra pointed at the screen. "It's back, and it moved inside our security perimeter." Valric's eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. His jaw tightened. "They're testing us," he muttered, "seeing how we react." "Sir, should we hail them?" Zyra asked, barely keeping her voice steady. Valric hesitated. Standard protocol was to send a warning before engaging any unidentified ships. But this wasn't a standard situation. This was something else entirely. Before he could respond, a new sound filled the air. A transmission. It wasn't in any known alien language. It wasn't even coded. It was a simple message. An old, almost forgotten dialect. English. Zyra didn't recognize the words, but the computer's translation system did. "We know you're watching. You should be afraid." A chill ran down Zyra's spine. Valric inhaled sharply. His expression was unreadable, but his fingers curled into fists. "This isn't possible," he whispered. Zyra checked the ship's energy readings. Still human technology. Still the same impossible signature. Valric turned to her. "Send a response." "But sir, we..." "Do it." Zyra's hands trembled as she activated the comm system. "This is Solarian Defense Station 9, she said carefully, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "Identify yourselves." For a moment, there was nothing. Just silence. Then, the warship moved. 1 second, it was floating motionless. The next, it was accelerating. Fast, directly toward the station. Shields to maximum. Valric barked. Energy surged through the station's hull. The defense systems roared to life, locking onto the incoming warship. Dozens of cannons aligned, ready to fire. But before a single shot could be fired, the warship stopped. Zyra's heart pounded. It had halted just meters away, close enough for the station's exterior cameras to get a clear visual. She activated the main screen. For the first time, Zyra saw it. The warship was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its black, angular hull was covered in battle scars, old wounds that told stories of war. The markings on its side were ancient, faded, but still legible. U.S. Revenant. "Sir," Zyra whispered. "That name, it's from the old records." Valric didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew what this meant. The stories had said that humanity was gone, that they had been wiped out, that no human ships had survived the Great Purge. But this ship was here, right in front of them. And then, a second transmission came through. This time, the message was different. "You erased us from history, but history remembers. We remember. And now, we're back." The screen flickered. A new reading appeared, an energy spike coming from the warship's core. Zyra's eyes widened. "Sir, they're powering up their weapons." Valric's voice was grim. "They're not here to talk. They're here for war." A warning siren blared across the station. Officers scrambled to their battle stations. Cannons locked onto the warship. But Zyra knew, deep in her bones, that it wouldn't be enough. Because if the old records were true, if the legends of humanity were real, then this was just the beginning. The warship hung in the void like a ghost from another era, its battle-scarred hull a silent testament to wars fought long before Zyra had even been born. The station's weapons were primed, its shields pulsing with energy, but nobody dared to fire, because despite all their technology, all their military power, a terrifying truth settled over them. They didn't know what they were dealing with. Commander Valric stood rigid beside Zyra, his eyes locked on the screen. The incoming energy surge from the warship continued to grow, an unmistakable sign that its weapons were preparing to fire. "How is this possible?" Zyra whispered, barely able to keep her voice steady. "Humans were wiped out centuries ago. Their technology shouldn't exist." Valric exhaled sharply, his fingers tightening into a fist. "The universe is full of things that shouldn't exist," he muttered. Another transmission came through. A deep, distorted voice filled the control room. "You never asked what happened to us." Zira shivered. The voice carried weight. Not just sound, but power. It was like the speaker wasn't just addressing them, but the entire history that had buried their existence. "Send a response," Valric ordered. Zira hesitated. "Sir, if we do it." She swallowed hard and activated the station's communication link. "This is Stellarian Defense Station 9. You are violating controlled space. Identify yourselves, or we will be forced to engage." Silence. And then, laughter. Deep, amused, human laughter. It echoed across the comms, rich with something Zira couldn't quite place. Not arrogance, not anger, confidence. They weren't afraid. Her heart pounded. Every species in the galaxy knew fear. Even the mighty Stellarians, rulers of vast territories, feared something. But whoever was on that ship, they did not. Then the laughter stopped. A new voice spoke. This one was sharper, colder. It carried the authority of command. "We have no quarrel with you, but your leaders, they have much to answer for." Valric stiffened. "What do you mean?" No response. Instead, the warship moved. Fast. 1 second, it was motionless. The next, it vanished. Not like before when it had simply disappeared from sensors. This time, it blurred, bending space around it in ways that no Stellarian ship ever could. A second later, alarms blared across the station. Zira's screen filled with warning signals. The warship had bypassed their defenses. It was now inside their perimeter. And worse, it was docking. "Sir," Zira gasped. "They're coming inside." Valric's hand shot up. "Activate interior security. Now." Guards scrambled, weapons drawn. The station's automated turrets locked onto the docking bay doors. Zira's fingers danced over the control panel, activating every defensive measure available. But deep down she knew it wouldn't matter. The humans had technology that defied logic. Their ship had already done the impossible. What chance did locked doors and security drones have against them? A deafening clang echoed through the station. They had breached. The docking bay doors tore open, not exploded, not forced with plasma cutters. They simply fell, like an ancient fortress gate giving way to an unstoppable army. And then, they stepped through. Zira's breath caught. The humans wore armor unlike anything she had ever seen. It wasn't sleek like Stellarian battle suits. It was heavy, worn, scared from real war. Their helmets glowed with red sensors, and their weapons hummed with a deep, pulsing energy. And at the front of them, one figure stood taller than the rest. Broad-shouldered, cloaked in the tattered remains of an old uniform. The letters across his chest plate were faded, but Zira could still read them. U.S. Revenant, Commander S. Kane, the leader of the Lost Humans. The man from legend. Zira's mouth went dry. This wasn't just history returning. This was vengeance. The air in the station's docking bay grew thick with tension. Zira's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her console, her wide eyes fixed on the figures stepping through the breached doors. The humans. They moved with terrifying precision, silent, calculating, unshaken by the dozens of armed Stellarian guards aiming weapons at them. The leader, Commander S. Kane, stood at the front, his battle-worn armor bearing scars that told stories no one here understood. His gaze, though hidden behind the red glow of his helmet's visor, seemed to cut through every being in the room. Zira could feel it. Beside her, Commander Valric tensed, his fingers curling into a fist. "You've just broken into a Stellarian military station," he growled. "You realize what that means?" The human leader tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "Yes." A single word. Cold. Certain. Unafraid. Zira felt a shiver run down her spine. These were not desperate survivors clinging to myths of their past. These were warriors who knew exactly what they were doing, and they didn't fear the Stellarian Empire. A Stellarian officer made a move, stepping forward with his plasma rifle aimed directly at Kane's chest. "Surrender now," the officer barked. "Drop your weapons and get on your knees." Kane didn't move. Neither did his soldiers. They didn't even flinch. The officer's hands tightened on his rifle. I said. It happened in a blink. Before Zara could process it, Kane vanished from where he stood, a blur of motion, faster than any Xilarian reflexes could track, and then he was behind the officer. A metallic gauntlet wrapped around the officer's weapon, crushing it like paper. Zara gasped. No Xilarian should be that fast. Kane leaned in, his voice low and filled with quiet menace. "You don't give us orders." The officer barely had time to react before Kane shoved him forward. Not violently, just a push. But the officer stumbled back so hard he crashed into two other guards, knocking them to the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. Valric's lips pressed into a thin line. His soldiers, trained, disciplined Xilarian warriors, stood frozen, uncertain whether to attack or stand down. Zara could see the doubt in their eyes. They were afraid. And that fear was exactly what Kane wanted. "Enough of this," Valric growled. He stepped forward, staring Kane down. "What do you want?" Kane's gaze turned toward him, and for a moment, the station's commander faltered. Then Kane spoke. "The truth." Zara frowned. "The truth." Kane's head tilted slightly. "For centuries, your empire has told the galaxy that humanity was wiped out, that we were weak, that we fell." Zara swallowed hard. That was the history she had been taught. Kane took another step forward, his presence overwhelming. "But here's the thing. The dead don't build warships." A chill ran through the room. Zara's mind raced. If humans hadn't been wiped out, if they had survived in the shadows, growing stronger, preparing for their return, then everything she knew about galactic history was a lie. Valric held his ground. "If humanity still exists, why wait until now to reveal yourselves?" Kane's voice dropped, quiet but razor-sharp. "Because now, we're ready." A new alarm blared through the station, one Zara had never heard before, a deep warbling siren that sent shudders through every panel and console. Her screen flashed with incoming data. More ships, not just the one. Dozens, hundreds. Every sensor across the station picked them up at once. Massive warships emerging from hidden locations across the system. Their hulls bore the same faded insignia as Kane's armor. Their engines burned with an eerie, unfamiliar energy signature. And their weapons, fully armed, fully charged. Valric's face went pale. "Impossible." Kane stepped forward, towering over him. "No," he said. "Inevitable." The Xilarian High Command had long boasted that their rule was absolute, that no force in the galaxy could challenge their might, that the ancient species known as humans were nothing more than whispers of the past, a myth to be told around dimly lit war rooms, a cautionary tale of ambition that ended in destruction. But the cold, glowing holographic display in front of Commander Valric told a different story. It was real. Hundreds of human warships, their hulls gleaming with unknown alloys, their engines radiating an energy signature unlike anything that Xilarians had ever seen, were emerging from the darkness. Silent, methodical, unstoppable. Zara felt her throat tighten as she zoomed in on the closest vessel. It dwarfed the Xilarian capital ships in size and design. The angular plating looked old, yet reinforced with technology that was beyond what their empire had ever encountered. This wasn't an isolated attack. This was a reclamation. "You lied to us," Zara whispered, turning to Valric, her voice filled with something between fear and fury. Valric didn't respond. His sharp, reptilian eyes remained locked on the impossible scene unfolding before them. His jaw tightened. His empire had promised that humans were extinct, and now they were here, returning like ghosts of a past that was never truly buried. A flicker of movement caught her attention. "Kane." The human commander had stepped forward, his stance unwavering despite the dozens of Solarian soldiers still aiming their weapons at him. He tilted his head slightly, listening to the alarms wailing throughout the station. Then he did something none of them expected. He smirked. Not in arrogance, not in mockery, but in certainty. "You never stood a chance," Kane said, his voice calm, almost sympathetic. The lights flickered. A deep vibration rumbled through the station structure. Zyra's console flashed red. An override command was being forced through their systems, slicing through their security measures like they were nothing more than a child's puzzle. Her heart pounded. "Impossible," she whispered. Kane's visor gleamed under the dim emergency lighting. "No," he said, his tone unwavering. "Inevitable." The station shook as the first wave of human warships activated their primary weapons. Beams of controlled energy, not plasma, not ion-based, something else entirely, lanced through space, targeting Solarian war fleets positioned around the outer system. Each shot landed with surgical precision, cutting through shields like they weren't even there. Zyra's hands trembled over her console. The Solarian Empire had fought countless battles, crushed rebellions, conquered entire civilizations, but they had never seen destruction like this. The screens flashed again. Multiple Solarian battleships were going dark, their signals vanishing as human weapons silenced them one by one. A deep primal fear crawled up Zyra's spine. The Solarian fleet wasn't just losing. They were being erased. Valric exhaled slowly, stepping toward Kane. Despite everything, the chaos, the warships, the unraveling of his empire, his voice remained steady. "You think this war is over already?" Kane tilted his head. "War?" He chuckled. "We haven't even started." A second later, the lights across the station died. Every console, every display, every weapon system, dead. A deep mechanical hum filled the silence. Then a voice, smooth, artificial, human, spoke through the emergency comms, broadcasting across the entire station. Solarian command functions overridden. Control transferred to United Terran Systems. Zyra's blood ran cold. The humans had taken the station, without firing a single shot. Valric clenched his jaw. "What now?" he asked, his voice tight. Kane finally removed his helmet, revealing piercing blue eyes that held the weight of centuries. He looked directly at Valric. "You tell me," Kane said. "Do you want to survive what comes next?" The silence that followed was deafening. Zyra's hands trembled over the dead console. The Solarian station, a fortress that had stood unshaken for centuries, was now under human control, and it had happened without a fight. She could still hear the soft hum of the station's systems, but they no longer belonged to the Solarians. Every security feed, every energy conduit, every weapon turret, all had been hijacked. The humans had walked into their territory, taken everything, and left them powerless. Kane's piercing blue eyes didn't waver. He stood there, helmet under his arm, looking at Valric like he was studying an ancient relic, something outdated, irrelevant. "Do you want to survive what comes next?" Kane had asked. Valric's jaw clenched. The question wasn't a threat. It was worse than that. It was an offer. Zyra's heart pounded as she analyzed the situation. Surrender wasn't in the Solarian vocabulary. The Empire prided itself on unbreakable strength, absolute dominance. But this was different. The humans hadn't come for war. They hadn't wasted time with diplomacy or posturing. They had simply taken control. The other Solarian officers around the chamber shifted uncomfortably. Some still gripped their weapons, but it was pointless now. They all knew it. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from Valric's chest. His claws twitched at his sides. "You think this is over?" he hissed. Kane's expression remained neutral. "I think your empire's biggest mistake was believing humans were legends," he said. "That was the moment you lost." A flicker of motion in the corner of Zyra's screen caught her attention. A new fleet signature. Her stomach dropped. More human ships, hundreds, emerging from the darkness of space, their massive forms barely illuminated by the distant glow of the system's twin suns. And at the center of them was something that made her breath hitch. A planet-sized dreadnought. It dwarfed anything that Solarians had ever constructed. Its surface was scarred from ancient battles, yet reinforced with layers of unknown alloys. The energy signatures radiating from its core defied every known law of physics. She barely managed to whisper, "What is that?" Kane glanced at the screen, then back at Valric. "That," he said, voice calm, "is your second mistake." The station shook. A pulse of invisible energy surged outward from the dreadnought, washing over the entire sector. Zyra's mind reeled as her display filled with error codes. The pulse had done something to space itself, disrupting the very fabric of reality around them. The Exilarian fleet outside the station, what remained of it, was struggling. Their engines flickered, their shields collapsed instantly. Some ships were simply vanishing, as if erased from existence itself. The Solarians had always believed themselves to be the apex of technological advancement. They were wrong. Kane exhaled slowly. "We've had a long time to prepare," he said, stepping closer to Valric. "You've had centuries to build your empire, to convince yourselves that the galaxy belonged to you." He gestured toward the dreadnought. "We had millennia." Zyra felt sick. This wasn't just a battle. It wasn't even a war. It was a reckoning. A sudden transmission crackled through the room, overridden by the human systems now controlling the station. A voice, cold, synthetic, and impossibly vast, echoed through every speaker. "Solarian Empire." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Your dominion ends today." Zyra barely registered her own breath as she realized something horrifying. The voice wasn't coming from the dreadnought. It was coming from the entire fleet, as if the ships themselves were alive. Valric's claws dug into his palms. He turned back to Kane. But this time, there was no arrogance in his stance, only the weight of a ruler who had finally realized what he was standing against. He had thought humans were extinct. He had thought their return was an anomaly. He had thought the Solarians were still the dominant force in the galaxy. But he had been wrong. And now, the last mistake of his empire was unfolding before his very eyes. The vastness of space trembled. Zyra could feel it, not just through the station's failing systems, but in her very bones. The Exilarian Empire had ruled for centuries, unchallenged, unquestioned. But now, for the first time in history, they faced true extinction. The human fleet had arrived. Not just as a military force, not as invaders, but as a force of nature. The massive dreadnought, a planet-sized titan of metal and energy, loomed over the Exilarian stronghold. Its presence alone was enough to send ripples of uncertainty through every surviving officer in the room. Valric stood motionless, his reptilian gaze locked onto the holographic display. Zyra could see it, the unspoken realization twisting in his mind. This wasn't just a battle. This was the end. The voice from the fleet continued to echo through the station's speakers, its tone neither cruel nor merciful. "Your dominion ends today." For the first time in her life, Zyra felt fear. Not the fear of losing a skirmish or even a war, but something deeper, the fear of irrelevance. The humans had not come back as equals. They had not come back to negotiate. They had come back as something beyond what the Solarians could comprehend. The console in front of her flickered as strange, unfamiliar symbols crawled across the screens, code she had never seen before, running through the system as if rewriting reality itself. Then, a new message appeared. Greater than system, override complete. Greater than control. Human dominion protocol engaged. Zyra's claws tightened against the edge of the console. Human dominion protocol. What did that mean? Kane exhaled, his face impassive. "This station is no longer yours," he said, glancing at Valric. "But you already knew that." Valric's fists clenched, his sharp teeth grinding together. His empire had spent centuries erasing human history, spreading propaganda that humans were nothing more than myths. And yet, here they were. Not just alive, not just thriving. Superior. You think this is over? Valric growled, his voice dangerously low. Kane met his glare, unflinching. It never even started. A deep rumble vibrated through the station, not from weapons fire, not from an explosion. Something else. Zyra's display glitched, static distorting the visuals before clearing to reveal something impossible. The dreadnought wasn't just a ship. It was activating something. The space around it twisted, darkened. Not like a wormhole, not like a warp field. Something new. A tear in reality itself. And from that tear, shapes emerge. Not human ships. Not anything Zyra had ever seen before. But constructs, massive, mechanical, shifting forms that defied logic, glowing with an energy she couldn't begin to comprehend. It was as if the dreadnought had reached into the fabric of space and pulled weapons from another plane of existence. Valric took a slow, hesitant step backward. What? What is that? Kane's lips curled slightly. The reason we never needed an empire, he said. The reason we never needed to conquer. Zyra's mind reeled. The Solarians had spent centuries expanding, assimilating, crushing lesser civilizations under their heel. That was the only way to survive. But the humans had evolved past it. They had not spent their time waging war like the Solarians. They had spent it becoming something else entirely. And now, the truth was undeniable. The war wasn't ending because the Solarians lost. The war was ending because the humans had already won before it even began. Another message appeared on Zyra's screen. Greater than final directive. Uploading. She swallowed hard, her claws trembling over the interface. Then, the station's lights dimmed. A single new transmission came through. A simple message. Kneel.